Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar today. So today we're going to be discussing the CEMS platform, which essentially consists of multiple different softwares. Our CEMS Diligence, which is our lower cost software, which is geared towards specific industries such as compounding pharmacies, labs, as well as food storage and some others, as well as our CEMS Connect platform, which is a little bit more expensive and used for a much wider range of applications. Um, I will be giving part of the presentation. My name is Rob LaMorte. I'm the business development manager for our software product line. And I'm also joined here by Mike Margerson, who is our EMEA sales manager based out of the UK. And I'll pass it over to Mike now, who's going to speak through the CEMS Diligence portion of our platform.
Good afternoon, everybody. As I say, it's Mike Margerson. I'm based in the UK, and I cover obviously the UK and Middle East and Europe. Obviously, I'm going to be looking after the CEMS Diligence part, obviously, which is our platform for monitoring of devices with various transmitters. And obviously, what I wanted to do first was sort of break down into why CEMS Diligence, and it's pertinent to monitoring of a hospital or laboratory spaces. It's designed to be covering various labs, so various different disciplines. So it could be, as I say, microbiology, virology, genetics, blood labs, from hospital pharmacies and stores, and it can cover multiple different devices. So whether you want to go from liquid nitrogen dewars through to -80 up to incubators and anything in between, including water baths, it will cover those sort of environments with the hardware and also with the cloud platform. The other area obviously is regards compliance and having accreditation from a calibration point of view, using obviously being accredited to ISO 17025, which also then feeds into being your accreditation to ISO 15189 for your laboratory competence, that sort of environment. So what is ISO 17025 and ISO 15189? 17025 sort of enables the laboratories to demonstrate how quickly and how competent they are with results in terms of calibration procedures coming on site. So if you do have a platform and you want to have that certified and you need that certified to be compliant, then obviously you've got to have an organization that is ISO 17025 certified. We are as an organization, and we hold that license and we hold that accreditation. And that will then enable you to facilitate cooperation between different laboratories and other bodies within the organization, generate test results, and in turn be able to have those accepted by other countries because it's a universally wide standard. As I say, this all then leads into your accreditation, underpins the confidence in the quality of your laboratories and the processes that you verify and their integrity. So you know with confidence, because you've got this accreditation, that will aid this 15189, and you'll be able to then have that when an auditor or an inspector comes along, you've got the relevant requirements to meet the criteria of the standard they set out. So why continuous monitoring with diligence? Well, one, it's easier to meet your regulatory compliance than using static data loggers or paper recording. I go to around lots of places and I still see a pen and paper and people writing down on a piece of A4 sheet, and then that's put on the front of the device. So it's a very manual based, or you have a static logger that you put inside the device and log data to the internal memory, and then you have to pull that device out and download the temperature information and then review your data to see if you had any non-conformities or compliances. Continuous monitoring, that enables you to do that automatically and be proactive in real time. So the electronic system provides this across multiple devices and multiple departments into one central platform. So the ability to say, hey, I've got a pharmacy and I've got that environment covered off with the diligence platform, but I want to roll that out towards, very easily deployable, all coming back to one environment. Plus, you can also have the people that are responsible for those local actions taking actions, because they can also get the alert notifications. So obviously alarms and alerts to all staff for 24/7 coverage via text, email notifications, auto dialer, and coming out in Q2 a klaxon. I have the klaxon ability with the alarm module box. You've also got the flexibility to add on additional areas as needed. So, and that's just not an area which could be just within your own local facility or estate. It could be one that's many miles away. As long as they've got a Wi-Fi capability, you can add them into your cloud license into the one complete platform. This also reduces your labor costs, and it negates staff having to go around taking a minimum number of readings per day and writing that information down, and then obviously not knowing what happens in between outside those hours of where nobody's taking a reading. It gives you that flexibility. And finally, obviously minimizes the product and sample loss. So obviously you've got the ability there to, if you're getting a real-time alert notification, that gets sent out to whoever it needs to go and action it, which will reduce the possibility of that sample or product being spoiled, because you'll have your standard operating procedures that you'll all work to in terms of how quick that reaction should be. That notification will go out to the appropriate people via various different methods that you choose. And it also ensures that the product or the sample or vaccine is safe to administer to a patient because it's kept within temperature specifications, and you've got that full traceable chain for when an auditor comes along. So in terms of what we do with Diligence, as I said, mentioned, there are two environments to it. You have the cloud platform, which I'll go to shortly, but the other side of it is actually transmitter hardware point of view. And this is effectively what a transmitter looks like. It's a Wi-Fi based system. It follows all the standard 2.4 gig Wi-Fi standards. So when if IT come along and ask you, do you follow the standards? Yes, we do. There's a Wi-Fi module built inside it. And obviously you can attach individual probes, or you can attach multiple probes to one transmitter. So here we've got a range of SRF 612, which is what I'm holding up in front of me, with a single probe attached. You can actually have up to 4 external probes attached to an SRF 612. There's a little breakout module, and that you can attach to 4 probes. And you can individually configure all those 4 individual probes. So one could be in a -20 freezer, one could be in a standard fridge, and one could be in an incubator, all next door to each other, all with independent alarm limits and all with independent alarm delays. And as you can see on this transmitter as well, you also got a 5th sensor, which is the internal sensor. So if you wanted to do a room ambient at the same time, you can do that. The SRF 613 is a temp and humidity transmitter, which is also what I'm holding up here. So as you see, it's got the internal sensor on here for the temperature side, and then obviously you've got an external cage area, which is where the humidity sensor sits in. We also have a thermocouple version, which is the SRF 614. We have an ultra-low device, which is the SRF 616. So that's a PT100 higher accuracy device, has up to 1 probe attached, and that can be inserted into -80 freezers or go into a liquid nitrogen dewar. More accuracy as well over and above your standard SRF 612. And finally, we have an SRF 615. That enables you to have, it's a multi-parameter transmitter. So you can attach a sensor. It could be a temp humidity sensor, it could be a pressure sensor, and you can have that powered up and going back via your standard transmitters into your Diligence platform, and it'll be displaying in SI units. So how we configure it would be, you have the sensor wired into a little box on the bottom, which then fits into the transmitter, and it's a 4 to 20 milliamp 0 to 1 0 to 10 volt output, and that goes into the transmitter and then goes out obviously into the Diligence cloud platform, fully customizable. So if I may, I'm just going to step through and walk through the Diligence cloud platform. So if I pop onto here, so this is Diligence cloud. So you have a cloud, and you have a cloud where you can add multiple different locations, and this is my demo cloud. So there are obviously some areas where you see you've got lots of different colors on there, and that's done on purpose to give us some information and not make it just standard. So Diligence cloud has the ability to have unlimited number of users, unlimited locations, and an unlimited number of emails. So this is via obviously using the Diligence Premium platform. And you initially get the dashboard overview. And obviously with your dashboard overview, you can see all your locations that you've got down here. So I've got some that are in Bangalore, I've got them in Boxborough in the US, I've got them here where I'm based in the UK, which is Newstead. And so obviously you can deploy very wide the transmitters across the whole of your estate and have that coming back. As long as there's Wi-Fi and the transmitter is attached to your Wi-Fi, you can bring it back into one particular location. And on this dashboard here, you can see I've got how many devices in alarm, how many unacknowledged, how many devices are snoozed or on repeat, how many devices are online, how many devices are offline. As soon as you touch this key where on down the side here will change, and it will change to be a certain device. And it will also tell you if you've got low batteries. So the system will tell you you've got a low battery. It'll indicate it on here. It will also send out an email to you to say you've got a low battery being reported. The transmitters take standard AA batteries. They're not lithium-ion batteries, so standard AA's which are available from any good retailer. If you have a transmitter fault, it'll also tell you if you've got a transmitter fault. So it'll report that out to you. The SRF612 can be mains powered. So you can mains power certain transmitters. If you wanted to have faster sample rates and faster transmission rates, then I would recommend obviously powering some transmitters. If you want standard transmission rates, which are obviously fully configurable, then you can just run it off the battery. But if the power goes off to the transmitter, it will tell you. It'll also tell you if you've got a probe fault. So if somebody snaps the probe or the probe gets removed from the transmitter, it will report that out to you as well. The other view that I particularly like here is RAG view, which is a red, amber, green view. So on this particular view, it gives you all your locations you've got associated and the various alarm groups, because you can have multiple alarm groups under a location. So here I'm going to go to Newstead, click on Newstead, and I'm going to select here, obviously, my my alarm groups. What's up here? So what I wanted to do was obviously look at particularly this SRF612 test. And now I can look at the transmitters I've got selected down in this particular location. And if I wanted to look at information on, so I've got 3 transmitters that sat in there. And this here will tell me the last time it was connected, what the battery status for this transmitter is. If I've got mains power connected to it, what the signal level's like. It will report out the signal levels. So for Wi-Fi, it will report out what your signal level is. If you do lose Wi-Fi, the transmitter will store the data to the internal memory of the transmitter. So it's got you can store up to 120,000 readings in a transmitter. And at this point here, you can go into view more detail within this particular transmitter. And on this particular area here, we're just looking from 12 o'clock to present time with your channels that are all labeled. So I'm going to go into more detail. So now I can see I'm getting in more detail of this particular device. So I'm looking at that device from 12 o'clock to present, but if I wanted to select a time record and go further back, I could do. And I'm pulling data back now for that time period and that event, and I can view that particular data. I can see what my min-max was over that time period and what my average was. If I've got channels labeled, so I've got an internal, I mean, this particular transmitter here I have in front of me. So I have the internal channel enabled, and I've also got the external channel enabled, which is obviously says freezer temperature, but it's sat beside me, so it's not in the freezer. And I can then turn on, if you've got alarm events, I can turn alarm events on, and you'll probably see on the screen there that there was an alarm event that took place, and you can display that in a vertical mode, so you can actually see how many alarm events you had in a time window. You can also attach comments to the graph. So I want to put a comment on here. I can attach a comment and say temp increase due to door open. Hit create, and it will now append that to the graph, and it will also put it in the audit trail. So if somebody wants to come in, and this is over and above acknowledging alarm. So if somebody wants to come in and look at what that was, they can do. They can click on it and you say they can read the note and who generated the note and at what date and timestamp. If you want to look at this in tabulated view, you can do. So you can hit tabulate view, and it will give you the information every date and timestamp with that particular transmitter of when an event took place. You can also see here that where you've got red, where it went into alarm, and there's additional samples in. So at the moment, we're sampling every 10 minutes on this transmitter. And you can actually see where where there was an alarm event, it broke into it and sent the information off. The transmitters are all smart and intelligent. They will literally be looking at what you've programmed every minute in the background, irrespective how often you've got a sample and how often you are transmitting all your data. In the background, it's looking every minute what you've programmed. And if it sees that it's breached your alarm limit level that you've set, it will automatically wake up, establish a Wi-Fi connection, and send the alarm notification off to whoever's going to receive it. It will also tell you locally on the display that you've got channel 1 is gone into high alarm, and it will also beep on here about 10 times, and it will also have a flashing red LED, which will continue to flash red until you acknowledge the alarm, and obviously the display will also tell you it's in high alarm or low alarm. Events, obviously, is alarm events. If you've got alarm events that take place, they'll also be listed down here and obviously into the audit trail, so you can look at your alarm view, and you can drill straight onto this information straight from here. You can also look at, as I say, alarm view, so there should be no devices in alarm on this one at the moment. There is a few from some of my colleagues. But you've got an audit trail. So here you can see in the audit trail what people are doing, and you can filter this, so you can see when people are logged on, when people have acknowledged alarms, when people have looked at information within the platform. So you get to see a lot of information, and this can all be audited and also can be printed out and can be put into Excel. So you can so you can export all the data and the samples into an Excel format, and you can print that out as well, and PNG the graphs. So that data can go out to wherever you wish to store that. But the raw data file itself remains encrypted in the dashboard in the cloud. In terms of transmitters, number of transmitters, the transmitters are unlimited. You can attach as many transmitters to your cloud license as you so desire. The locations that you define, unlimited, you can attach as many. Users are the same, and the users are, you can set them up to only be able to view certain locations and alarm groups and not see everything. A system administrator will be able to see everything, but you can tie that down to users to actually only have visibility of certain locations and certain transmitters. Very flexible in how you want to deploy across your users and your estate. Users can't change their authorized rights. Only system administrators can do that. So if a user, you want to upgrade a user to having more rights, they can do that. The system administrator can do that. The actual user can't. But the user can administer their own password. So they have the ability to renew their password, but not change the privileges. In terms of adding locations and users, it's very simple. You go and adding transmitters. So if I'm adding a transmitter, go to transmitter view. There is a plus key up here, and when you hit the plus key, it will come up with a serial with a add transmitter function, and then you just add a transmitter and type in the serial number, and that will create the transmitter into the list. You can then task the transmitter by creating and updating a task within here. Adding a user, very simple. Hit a user. Yet again, there'll be the plus key over on this side, and I seem to have lost it on my screen. So there will be a plus key. And with that plus key, when you hit the plus key, you can then add a user and put their rights and what they can be authorized to view or see within that location. Same with locations along the side here. You can hit locations and add additional location, which might be off-site. It might be a completely different location. You can do that, or the system administrator can do that. Alarm groups that are associated at that location. So you can hit alarm groups, and you can create a number of alarm groups to that location. And so you might have a laboratory which has 3 different sections in it, and you want to make 3 different alarm groups under that particular laboratory. You can create that. And there might be people that have different responsibilities for each of those laboratories or each of those alarm groups. So you can have, could be Rob LaMorte is responsible for alarm group 1, and Mike Margerson is responsible for alarm group 2. And what you can do is have their names just associated to that, and their email addresses and their contact details. And only they will then get notified of the alarm within their particular location. So it's very flexible in how that works. And that is a very brief overview of, obviously, of what Diligence Cloud can do for you, and the powerfulness of actually being able to deploy it across your facility. If I pop back to the presentation. Okay. So this was a case study in fact, obviously Aberdeen Royal Infirmary in Scotland. They had a requirement to monitor various different disciplines or various different departments. So they had from effectively blood through to microbiology through to genetics, and they wanted to have the ability to monitor all these devices across these different departments under one platform. They went for diligence, and as you say, it's about 150 plus transmitters, about 300 plus monitoring points, various different laboratory managers, probably about 8 or 9 different laboratory managers, as well as a full system quality manager. And they have this ability to obviously view their own data for their own key disciplines, and they get a lot of notifications to their own staff using Wi-Fi. So their Wi-Fi is a robust Wi-Fi, and it goes up through the Wi-Fi access points and out into to the cloud. There is an area where you've got a mixed signal level, then I would recommend that IT deploy another access point to give you a stronger Wi-Fi signal. That's something we don't get involved with, but generally IT departments will have done a site survey, will have created a signal heat map, and they will obviously then say, yep, we're going to have to deploy an additional access point to give you a greater degree of Wi-Fi coverage. And that's what happened in Aberdeen. That was the case. They had some areas which were a poorer signal level, and they just deployed some additional access points so the staff could enable to have monitoring across those locations. In terms of, they obviously have calibration on each of their points up to the ISO 17025. So they have us come on site in the UK and certify. In other territories, it would be that you would have a third-party calibration company come in and calibrate the sensors themselves, the actual individual probes, and produce you a NIST certificate in the US, so to calibrate the actual devices on site. And we also provide training. So the training would be carried out either in person or yet again via a webinar or a Teams type discussion. So common challenges that we have, that clients have, is obviously for what they have is in terms of how many devices and how often they're taking reads. It takes a long time. They're manually recording data. There's no need for manually recording data with diligence. That all does it automatically for you. How accurate is the data that's being recorded? If it's being done manually, it's down to human intervention, and mistakes can happen, and also readings might not even be taken at the appropriate times. With diligence, that's negated. It literally is however you set to say take a sample, it will take a sample and it will store it and it will transmit it and it will record it, date and time stamped. Obviously, if you get a deviation, attempt deviation or an excursion, the diligence cloud will prompt the user to go and, hey, I've got an alarm, go fix it. And that's what, if you don't have an automated platform, then you're behest at trying to rework the data after the event's gone, and that is a lot of work that's involved, and that can lead to loss of product. It can also lead to obviously samples being can't even be replaced because you can't get that sample any longer. And also how often you have to review the data and recall information and rectify. That's also another area which is without an automated system, you'll end up having gaps. Plus, we're trying to meet regulatory compliance and keep that on board. And using an automated platform like Diligence, that enables you to do that. And I would like to hand over to Rob, if at all possible, because obviously he's going to now into CEMS Connect. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. One thing while I get this brought up here, I forgot to mention when I was doing the introductions, there is a section to leave questions in the webinar, so feel free to type them as I go through this. There'll also be a time at the end for questions if anybody has any. But I'm going to talk through, sorry, let me get to the right slide here. I'm going to talk through the CEMS Connect portion of which we've historically just called CEMS. I'm also going to talk through some regulations that drive this as well. So The CEMS Connect, we really are more focused on life sciences, like selling into clean room type applications, whether it be 503A, 503B, or manufacturing facilities. They can also be used for hospital applications as well if you wanted to share your information across different personas that didn't have access to the building automation system. But in terms of like the clean room side of things, a clean room is a controlled environment with low levels of pollutants and dust that are highly regulated and highly controlled. So having a continuous monitoring system in clean rooms is common practice. When I say 503A, there might be just some confusion. So these first couple slides are just sort of educational. So a 503A compounding pharmacy refers to a smaller facility that's compounding for specific patients. So it's regulated by USP. It refers to USP 795 through 800. And the USP does not require a validated EMS, and it also doesn't require particle count monitoring. That being said, those are still best practices where your 503B manufacturing facilities are going to be regulated by the FDA as opposed to being regulated by the USP. It's much more stringent in terms of the environmental monitoring portions of things. They do now, while continuous particle count monitoring is something that's not hard required by your 503B facilities, it is recommended as a best practice to have some sort of additional particle count monitoring beyond just having someone come in to essentially certify that your clean room meets the right space. So whether it be, manual sampling is better than doing nothing, but then having mounted particle counters doing a continuous particle count monitoring is sort of best practice for those 503B type facilities. And then within hospitals, there's different standards and accreditations that essentially regulate the various areas. So we already talked about the USP. Another big one is the American Association of Blood Banks. So essentially, that is the regulatory body that is essentially certifying that the blood banks within hospitals are maintaining the correct regulations. The Board of Pharmacies does that for your compounding pharmacies, and then it'd be FDA if you had a 503B compounding pharmacy. However, in hospitals, it's most common to have a 503A. So let me talk about some of these specific regulations in a little bit more detail. So USP 797 and 800, it essentially there's a new requirement that took effect in 2023. So essentially all compounding pharmacies should be complying to the latest regulation, where there's now category 3 areas. So before, compounding pharmacies were sort of broken into category 1 and 2 areas. The benefit of having category 3 area is that it allows you to store drugs for longer. So you can go beyond the use dates, but there's a higher requirement for a continuous monitoring system within those category 3 areas to sort of ensure that the products are being stored at the right conditions, as opposed to just the twice a day manual checks, which are acceptable for your category 1 and your category 2 spaces. So as I mentioned, pressure, temperature, and humidity, and the storage temperatures all must be recorded at least once a day. However, a continuous monitoring is highly recommended and considered the best practice. You also have to have your clean room certified either annually or biannually, depending on the ISO class. And one other change that took effect with the latest regulation is that there's now a pressure range for your USP 800 areas. So before, it just had to be larger. You just had to have a minimum of 0.01 inches of water column. Now there's a range of between 0.01 to 0.03 inches of water column. So it's good to have a continuous sensor kind of measuring that and then alerting if you go outside of that range. One other area I'll quickly talk about is the American Association of Blood Banks. So there are some strict requirements around blood bank monitoring. So this could be used for either the CEMS Connect or the CEMS Diligence. But essentially, it as of April of 2022, it's a hard requirement to continuously monitor your blood banks, both the temperature of the freezer and the refrigerator, as well as the temperature of the blood himself, through essentially, yeah, you essentially replicate the temperature of the blood and measure that continuously as well. Prior to that, manual testing was acceptable, but now it's a hard requirement to sort of have a continuous monitoring system. So those wireless temperature sensors that Mike was showing at the beginning of this presentation are sort of great for this application, to essentially easily comply with these regulations, because they're very retrofittable. You don't have to pull wires or anything like that. So anybody that's trying to move from a manual logging to continuous monitoring, the wireless sensors make that really easy in terms of the installation costs. One last area I'll talk about is, your clean rooms. Your clean rooms are typically certified to an ISO class, so it could be anywhere between ISO 1 through ISO 9. ISO 1 being your cleanest environment, ISO 9 being the dirtiest. And then to comply with it, clean rooms typically have to follow this chart here, which essentially gives you the total number of particles that are acceptable in your clean room to still meet that ISO class regulation. Uh, Now, like I mentioned, you only have to have your clean room certified either once or twice a year, depending on your ISO class. And the number of spots that you have to take samples to certify your clean room is given by this formula that I put up here. So essentially, if you had a 1,000 square foot clean room, you'd have to take 27 samples there to certify that it meets the right ISO class. Now, if you want to add the continuous particle count monitoring tied into our software, which is considered best practice as the FDA, it's often cost prohibitive to put one of our continuous particle count monitors in each of those 27 sampling locations that you need to certify your clean room. And that's really not its design intent. Really, what you'd want to do is identify the most critical spots within your clean room to place your particle counters to take regular samples so that in between your certification visits that your clean room is well within the correct operating conditions. And if you did get a spike in particle counts, you would still receive those real-time notifications that allow you to take the corrective action. So pretty much anywhere where product is exposed to open air, where if there was a high particle count event happened, your product would most likely be affected by it. Those are the areas where you typically want to mount a particle counter to take regular samples throughout the day. But some customers, their current practice might be to have a bench top and on a weekly or daily or monthly basis go around and essentially sample in each of their 27 locations that they would need to certify their clean room. That takes a ton of manual effort, and also it's only giving you a snippet as to how that clean room is operating at the time while you're taking that sample. Where if you had a continuous particle count monitor, while you're not sampling in as many locations, you're getting a lot more data and a lot more actionable data, so that if you can identify trends within your clean room and things of that nature. So why continuously particle count? I was kind of talking through this a little bit on my last slide, but for your 503Bs, it's best practice to essentially have some sort of additional particle count monitoring beyond the certification visits. So, like I was just discussing, having those mounted particle counters to take the regular samples is considered best practice. Now, essentially, there's two different types of customers that are interested in particle counting. The ones that are doing it to comply with regulations, and the others that are doing it to maximize yield. And that's really pretty much broken down by industry. So, your semiconductor chip manufacturing, aerospace and defense, electronic components, optics, things of that nature are also very interested in continuous particle count monitoring. But those guys are really doing so to maximize their yield, to maximize their production, as opposed to being concerned about complying with specific regulations. Um, I mentioned you can obviously catch your high particle count events in real time. You can identify trends within your clean room. So this is big as well. So, if your filters are getting dirty over time, you'll be able to see that proactively by your particle count readings kind of inch up week over week. Similarly, if you had any issues with, like, say, your gowning process wasn't going properly, and every time there's a shift change, there's a big excess in particles that flood your clean room. You'd be able to capture those types of events by having a mounted particle counter regularly sample, where, if you just had someone go in once a week or once a day to sample, you might not capture events like that. So there are some benefits. Um, we already talked about the saving of manual hours, be better prepared for audits. So whether it be your customer that's auditing you, or if it's like an accreditation board that's coming to audit you, having a continuous monitoring system is always helps be best prepared for that. And lastly, it can provide energy savings as well. So if you did have a continuous particle count monitor in your clean room, and you had to maintain an ISO 6 environment, for instance, you could essentially turn down your FFU levels and still maintain that ISO 6 environment by, continually sampling that particle count and verify, hey, we could run our fan filter units at 50% and still maintain the cleanliness that we're looking for, and that will provide some energy savings. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide just because I've already relayed all this information to you. But essentially, this is the different industry, the regulatory body, as well as the value proposition for that industry. So I mentioned, your 503A is regulated by USP. Really, you're saving time with doing the manual readings. You're ensuring patient safety, and verifying the clean room is within those right conditions in between those certification visits, where your 503B compounding pharmacies, as well as biotechnology and med device, are all regulated by FDA. There, it's considered best practice to have that continuous particle count monitoring system. Again, you can ensure quality with the real-time alarming, and I mentioned that optimizing your clean room operations. And then lastly, your semiconductor chip, aerospace and defense, optics and electronics, or even contract manufacturing, not driven by regulation, but more so driven by trying to maximize production yield, and also to prove to their customer base that during the entire time of production, our clean room was operating within the right conditions. And with that, I'll jump over to a quick, very brief demo of our CEMS Connect software. It also has a real-time dashboard and is 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, and has all the text and email notifications as well. It can also integrate with the BAS. So this is one thing I don't really have a slide on, but I do want to mention it. Is that a very common thing within hospitals is that the compounding pharmacy managers, the lab managers, or the operating room managers want access to the data for the areas that they care about, but they don't have seats in the building automation system. They can't have access to that without going through facilities. And lots of times that can cause issues when they get audited. They have to request the information from facilities and then get back. With CEMS Connect, we can essentially pull those data points over from your building automation system and provide them to people, to personas who don't have access. So that way they still have all of their data available to show to their auditors, but they aren't able to control anything. They can't make any changes to the BAS. They don't have a seat in the BAS, which is, typically what the facilities guys want. And similarly, if you had a hospital with multiple facilities and there's a bunch of different building automation systems, and there's a Siemens in one, there's a Johnson Control in another, there's an Allerton in another one, you can kind of have all of those building automation systems speak together by integrating CEMS, and essentially we'd be able to provide all of that data, to the individuals that would like to see it. So let me jump over to the software really quickly. The CEMS Connect, just like Diligence, is a web page. Anywhere that you have internet access, you can log in to view the status. Similarly, we also have the user and administrator levels of access. So someone with user privileges would be able to just view the system, but they couldn't make any changes. And admin has a little bit more functionality. So when we start on this campus view. So as I mentioned, if you did have multiple facilities, you could manage them all from the same software. And then within any one of your buildings, we have multiple different areas or spaces. So I can click in on one of my areas, and the CEMS Connect platform, we use a floor plan where each of these halo dots represents a different piece of equipment, and the color is the status. So green is everything's good. Orange is a warning level, red is an alarm level, and gray would mean we've lost power or communication to a device. So if I wanted to view the real-time sensor data, I can just click in on any one of these sensors, and I can see essentially. Let me actually go to a different one. This one's kind of. I'll click on this right here. Yeah, so you can see this right here is a temperature and humidity sensor. The temperature parameter is currently in its alarm state because it's above this red dotted line. So the red dotted line represents an alarm level, and the orange dotted line represents a warning level. We're viewing the information for the last 5 hours. Sorry, but we can view it for up to the last. We store 2 years worth of data in the cloud, so I can change to view the information for the last 2 years. I can stack my graphs on top of each other, which is kind of a cool feature. So any two parameters that we're measuring within the software, I can stack them on top of each other to see if there's a correlation. So this is a temperature humidity relationship. If you had multiple temperature sensors and wanted to see if your high temperature event was isolated to a single area or is more widespread, or similarly with a particle count, high particle count event, you want to see, okay, is this just in this one area or were my other particle counters affected? It's sometimes effective to stack those graphs on top of each other to see if there's a correlation. Um, and from this screen, I have the ability to manually download my data through a number of file formats, as an Excel, a PDF, or a CSV file. We also have automated reports built into the software as well. So you can get any of the information that's being captured, you can generate an automated report to send it to you, whether it be your alarm data, your sensor telemetry, or your audit logs. So if you wanted a daily alarm report or a weekly sensor data report, I can have it pre-programmed to be emailed to me automatically. The whole software is 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, which means essentially the entire audit logs are captured. And sorry, I'm trying to. My control bars is in the way of some of the buttons I was trying to press. But yeah, so anytime a device goes into alarm, a text or email notification will get generated. You'll also see that alarm populate over here on the right-hand side. And, if I could change my filters, if I want to see, both cleared alarms. So these cleared alarms down here are essentially telling me that my device went into its alarm state and then since returned to its normal state. So, if your system goes into alarm overnight, you'd be able to see that captured. But whoever's managing the system would be able to acknowledge the alarms by pressing this little plus button. And then I could either enter in my own custom reason or have preset reasons. And then whoever is entering that would be required to sign their name to that alarm acknowledgement as well. And this is part of that 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, where essentially it'll capture the full trail of the alarms of when it was triggered, who acknowledged it, as well what was done to get the alarm back into the acceptable levels. So let me show you that. So sorry. Uh, the control for this is kind of throwing me a little bit. Sorry about that. I zoomed in too far. Here we go. So now I can change my filters again. I can see that alarm acknowledgement. So this one now has a check mark saying that, okay, that alarm was just acknowledged by me. And I can go over to my audit logs, and I can see that alarm acknowledgement here. So all that is captured. So if you ever do get audited, you can essentially export your alarm table as well as your audit log table, and it'll show them, exactly what you did to get your system back within compliance. Last couple things I'll show you in the software before we kick it over to, open it up for questions. So we have this notification scheduler here, which essentially allows you to change who received notifications given the time of day. So if you had different people working and you wanted to send notifications to a different persona depending on the date of the month or the time of the day, you can pre-program that there. Similarly, you could change your alarm thresholds based off the time of the day or the date. So if you had different operating conditions during operating hours versus overnight when no one was there, you could have your alarm thresholds essentially changed based off the time of day. We also have a calibration tracking tool built into the software so the system will send you notifications 30, 60, 90 days out when your devices are approaching recalibration. So you can think about either sending the equipment back to Cetra or having a third-party company come on site to do the calibration. We actually just partnered with a company named Standard Calibrations that are able to field calibrate all of our sensors with the exception of our particle counters. That's the only thing that would have to come back to Cetra for recal. Lastly, I'll just show you this tile view. So tile view shows you the similar information as to what was on the floor plan, just represented differently now. Each of these tiles represents a piece of equipment, and again, the color is the status. So let's just say I want to click in to view my my particle counter data. I can click in on this particle counter, and let's we look at our 0.5 micron particle counting. Particle counter information is always best viewed over larger time frames, I would say. So let's just look at like the last 2 weeks worth of particle counter data. So you can kind of see that on your screen now. So we had that big particle count event. Last week it looks like that we had that big spike. So if you just had someone going in once a week or once a month or even once a day to sample, there's a good chance that particle count event wouldn't be captured unless someone was in the room sampling at that time, in which case you might think, hey, maybe that person was the cause of the particle count event. But with a continuous particle count monitor, you're able to see these big spikes. And if I did have that alarm threshold set, our quality manager would receive that notification. Then he'd be able to do a stop production and do an analysis to make sure that nothing that was being manufactured was affected by that at the time. Let me jump back over to the presentation. That was sort of a brief overview of the software. There's a bunch of other functionalities in here, but I think that gives you kind of an idea of the capabilities of what our CEMS Connect platform can do. So let me jump back over to the slide. Okay, so this right here is the last slide I have, and it essentially is just talking through the differences between the Diligence platform and the CEMS Connect platform. So the biggest difference, I would say, is that the Diligence requires our wireless sensors. So now there is ability to wire hardwire sensors into the Diligence platform through the SRF 615, which Mike was talking about, where you can essentially wire an analog output to one of our wireless transmitters to get that data to live on the Diligence cloud. But by and large, the Diligence is really meant for our SRF wireless product line. And where CEMS Connect can be used, for any of our sensors or third-party sensors as well. So as long as they communicate via BACnet, analog, contact closure, even if it's a Modbus signal, we should be able to pick that up as well, and bring it into our software to display, log, and alarm all those various the various parameters. The Diligence is an easier system to start up, both like initially, because in terms of installation, you don't have to pull wires or anything like that. And then there's a quick start guide to quickly configure and get the system online. So it's definitely simpler in terms of bringing it online initially. And let me see, sorry. Uh, And also, yeah, I'll mention that we do have an app as well for the CEMS Connect platform. So there are definitely some advantages, like the CEMS Connect software is more graphical and you have that floor plan. So there's some advantages on the software side of things. But yeah, that's really the main differences between the two. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will open it up to questions. So if there are any questions out there, feel free to speak up and ask away, and we'll be happy to address them.
Yeah, we do. We do have some questions in the chat, so
Great.
we can start there. There's a couple questions. Two different people were asking about text message alerts no longer coming through. So I don't know if there's some troubleshooting they need to do.
Oh,
Or
really?
we could follow up afterward. But yeah, it says when we first started using the system, we could get texts. That's no longer happening. We're only getting emails, and someone else echoed the same.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I've not heard that. I will follow up with my engineering team to understand what's going on there and send an update. Because yeah, you should definitely still be able to receive the text and email notifications anytime anything goes into alarm.
Cool. Yeah, so I can provide I'll give you some names after this and we'll figure that out.
Sure.
Another question on does the system work reliably through walls and across multiple rooms? And if so, what's the maximum distance it can cover indoors?
Mike, I'll let you handle that one.
I'm guessing this is to do with Diligence.
Yep.
Yet again, it depends on the properties. You should be able to go through walls, but obviously if they are extremely thick and you get in an area where you have poor Wi-Fi coverage, then it is advisable to deploy another access point in an area. There's no set standard in terms of distance that I could categorically state, because there are a bunch of factors which dictate that. Wall thickness, construction of those walls, metal barriers, if there's any metal barriers, so if there's acts like a Faraday cage to detract that. But there is a signal meter on the transmitters. So there is a signal meter, so you can go to an area and look at what the signal level is. And if it's down in the the high minus 70, low minus 80 dB, that is a very poor signal. If you're up at minus 38, minus 29 dB, that's a very strong signal. Effectively, you're sat on top of the access point. But behind any access point, there is just a Cat5, Cat6 cable, and IT should be able to deploy access points wherever there's an Ethernet port, turn the port on, and install an access point to give you Wi-Fi in that area.
Cool, thank you. Let's see, Michael Brown had a question here. He said, if you set up the software to poll devices every 10 minutes, is it still considered continuous or periodic?
Sure. So I guess it depends on which device what type of devices you're talking about. For our pressure, temperature, and humidity sensors, that data is recorded every single minute and fed to the cloud. And if it does cross its alarm threshold, you will receive those notifications instantaneously. So for the SRFs, you do set the transmit rate. So let's just say the standard transmit rate on those is 4 hours. So every 4 hours, you'll essentially get a dump of the last 4 hours, every minute's data, but they'll come in 4 hours at a time, essentially. But then you'll be able to see, your data down to the minute, essentially, once that data is uploaded to the Diligence platform. Now, that being said, if the alarm threshold is crossed, it will instantly get fed up to the cloud, and the notifications will get sent out right away. So it is continuous in that sense. The only thing that is not truly continuous, I guess, is your particle count monitoring, because really you want to set a sampling rate there where there's an internal pump to our particle counters, and there's a balancing act between how frequently am I sampling and how often will I have to have the internal pump serviced, essentially. So we typically have a 1 minute sample and a 9 minute rest period. And if you maintain that sampling rate on our particle counters, they should last for more than 3 years before you'd have to have that internal pump serviced. Now, I guess it's not truly continuous. It's more like regular particle count monitoring. But when when people say continuous particle count monitoring, they typically are thinking of something kind of taking very frequent samples and not necessarily 100% of the time sampling. So.
Cool. Couple more questions. This is a two-parter, but what's the max number of probes the transmitters can take? And then they want to know where they can see the cost for each transmitter.
Okay,
Sure.
So the SRF 612 can take up to 4 external probes. The SRF 614, which is a thermocouple, can take up to 3 external probes, and the SRF 616 can take up to 1 external probe, and that's a PT100, so it's a platinum resistant. So PT1, the SRF 616 is actually a very high accuracy device. Thermocouple has a very wide temperature range, and you can have the right probe for a thermocouple device, and the SRF 612 is a thermistor based, has up to 4 external probes and obviously an internal sensor. In terms of pricing, we can get you pricing sorted out for transmitters, probes, calibration. I'm more than happy to have a conversation regards that after this.
Yeah, we can definitely share pricing out. The software is a subscription model, so you are paying for the software essentially on an annual basis, and it's based on the total number of points that you have, however many transmitters or sensors that you have tied into your system, that it affects the price. So, we can discuss your specific application in detail and kind of get you a probe. But also, I know you didn't ask about this, but this is a question I have been asked: is how many sensors can I have in total tied into our platform? And there really is no limit there. We have some customers with hundreds and hundreds of sensors tied in to both the Diligence and the CEMS Connect platforms. So there's really no limit as to the number of sensors you can have integrated.
Cool. Another question on Diligence. The person says, I might have missed it, but are dynamic alarms now available in Diligence?
They are being released in the next sprint. Sorry, the next release of the cloud. So dynamic alarms are coming. It wasn't on there, but they are due for release. And that release will be in. We have to give customers 28 days notice. So that release will be in a month's time, but they'll be notified of a release, I believe, on Friday.
Great. Also on Diligence, are there any plans for a beacon for the Diligence system?
Yes. So end of Q2, there will be an alarm module box, which will look like a transmitter. And on here will be 2 switch outputs, and you can attach a klaxon or 2 klaxons, and you can attach, or you could attach a klaxon and an auto dialer, physical auto dialer, and that will is being released at the end of Q2. And you can have, because it's a Wi-Fi, you can have as many alarm module boxes and klaxons as you so desire. Where on our previous platform, which was limited, it was tied to a physical box in a laboratory, which was not movable. Where now, because it's Wi-Fi, you could have 2 different laboratories, can have 2 alarm module boxes and their own sets of klaxons. And only if Lab 1's alarms go off, it will only trigger Lab 1, the Lab 1 alarm module box and klaxon.
Great. Again, on Diligence Cloud, is it possible to export the alarm table and audit trail table to CSV files?
Good question. Don't know the answer to that. We'll come back to you.
Sure. The answer to that is yes on the CEMS Connect side of things, but yeah, we'll confirm on the Diligence on that exporting capabilities.
Okay. Looks like this is a little bit of feedback / a question, but person says the alarm acceptance and Diligence has a 100 character limit, and if you go over this, the comment doesn't save. So is there a way you could have that a character countdown so you don't go over the limit or remove the limit?
That's a very good piece of feedback. Yeah, we'll share that with our internal engineering team. There's no saying if we can get that in there by this next release, which is going to happen next month, but I definitely see the value in that, and I'm sure we'll address that moving forward.
Cool. Another question here. Susan says we have issues where users are set up with alarm groups, and then alarm groups can be deleted weeks or months later, and we only realize it when the person is on call or attempts to acknowledge an alarm and can't.
Okay. We'll look into that for you, Susan. If those people have authorized, it should be. Let's look into that. I'll take it offline and look into that for you, Susan. That's no problem.
Okay. Cool. Another question here. If you have multiple departments on one view in Diligence and you need to run an audit trail for one department, how can you separate them and not see all of the other departments? And then how can you get that to export to Excel?
So if you're a full system administrator, you'll be seeing multiple departments. I'm guessing if you want to bring it down to one specific department, you will need the export into Excel part is tied to the previous question. We'll need to look into that. In terms of multiple departments under the one audit trail view, we'll feed that back into the team. So I know they've been working on that into the development team, and that has been a question that has been raised because all you're interested in is your own department and your own audit trail for that department. So that is in the development team's workings as we speak.
And then I'll just say on the Connect side of things, we do have that ability where, you can have users only view their individual areas. So if you had, labs, also compounding pharmacies on the same platform, you could provide, access to all the information to an administrator, and then you could provide access for each of the individual departments to just be able to view their information. So there are ways to kind of segment it across different departments, and then still provide someone with an overarching access to be able to view all the department's data if they want that.
Great. I've got two more questions. We have like a minute or two left. We can go over, but if anybody has any more last minute questions, feel free to throw them in. We'll go through these last two unless anything else comes up. Susan, another question. We have issues in a specific area where we continually have low signal. What would you recommend?
I would get IT if you can to deploy another access point. That is the best way to do it. They should be able to deploy an access point into that area to boost you signal. If it's if it's marginal and you keep dropping in and dropping in and then dropping out, that is where it's a marginal signal level for Wi-Fi. The data will still be stored to the internal memory of the transmitter, and then when it reattaches, it will upload the data. But to give you the full confidence of that, then they will need to deploy an access point in that area or a Wi-Fi extender to give you Wi-Fi coverage.
Cool. And then looks like the last one here is from Alex for the Connect system. What are the on-floor display options? Is a Cetra display required, or could you use a pre-existing tablet?
So we would essentially ask you for your floor plan and where the physical pieces of equipment are going to be located so that we can put those halo dots in the appropriate spots. So, if you'd like us to provide a generic floor plan, we could do that, but by and large, we use our customers' floor plans to replicate their space so they understand sort of, if something goes into alarm, they know exactly where and what they need to do to address it.
Great. Looks like that was it. So I'll leave it to you guys to sign off. That's all the questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining. You'll get a follow-up email with this copy of this presentation. I'll also share our slide deck out as well. So that way, and you also have both Mike and I's contact information. So if you have specific questions or would like pricing on anything, feel free to reach out to us and we can definitely help you out with that. All
Lovely.
right, thanks.
Thanks much, Steve. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.